On October 16, 2017, journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia was killed in a bomb explosion near her home in Malta. She was driving down a hill just before 3 p.m. when a bomb underneath her seat exploded, causing a fatal crash. But who could do such a thing? Well, she was known for her brave reporting, which often exposed wrongdoing by governments, big companies, and influential people. It's safe to say that she had a lot of enemies, and it was only a matter of time before someone permanently silenced her. This is the story of Daphne and how she was killed for telling the world the truth. Most of Galizia's work focused on the Panama Papers, a massive leak of millions of documents from a Panamanian law firm in April 2016. These documents expose various cases of fraud and both legal and illegal tax evasion by wealthy individuals worldwide. The Panama Papers leak was the largest in history and was used by journalists globally to investigate politicians and business magnates in their respective countries. Galizia used the papers to scrutinize government figures in Malta, where she had already been dedicating years to challenging corruption and investigating the country's leaders. She constantly challenged the corrupt, which ultimately made her a big target. Because of this, she faced countless threats, both physical and legal. Following the Panama Papers leak, Galizia turned her investigative focus to Maltese Prime Minister Joseph Muscat. She accused two members of his government, Keith Schembri and Conrad Mitzi, of establishing companies in Panama shortly after taking office. Not just that, but she also alleged that Muscat's wife set up a company there soon after he became Prime Minister. Schembri and Mitzi defended themselves by stating that they set up the companies to manage their private wealth, while Muscat denounced Caruana Galizia's claims about his wife as completely false and defamatory. Despite this, her accusations prompted Muscat to call for an election to demonstrate his public support, which he won, but facing continued pressure from a population that wasn't too happy with his handling of corruption, Muscat ultimately resigned in January 2020. During all of this, Daphne was getting riskier with her journalism. It was clear that someone was going to come after her, and that's exactly what happened. After leaving her home in the village of Benia, Galizia was killed when a bomb detonated under the driver's seat of her car, propelling the vehicle off the road in a deadly explosion. In the 6 months following her murder, police investigators tried to figure out exactly how her killers carried out the crime. It's believed the bomb was triggered remotely using a mobile phone. This led them to focus on identifying who was making calls in the vicinity at the time of the explosion. After sorting through thousands of calls, investigators eventually identified 2 phone numbers linked to devices that appeared to have been used to detonate the bomb. The first was just a Nokia. While it seemed pretty harmless, the device was actually used to send the activation code for the bomb via text. The other device, known as the God device, had a SIM card that received the code and triggered the bomb's explosion, and the entire process was very meticulously thought out. Around 2 a.m. on that fateful day, the God device was switched on, sending a signal from Benia, where Daphne's car was parked outside her home. In the days leading up to the murder, Daphne's movements were carefully observed by the killers from a ridgeline overlooking her house. The phones were signalling from Valletta's Grand Harbour. After investigators corroborated these signals with CCTV footage, they identified a distinctly named small boat called the Maya. At 2:55 p.m., the Maya came to a halt and idled along a sheltered stretch of water beneath a war memorial known as the siege bell. At about the same time Galizia was preparing to go to the bank, 2 phone calls were made to the Maya boat from Bonilla. A text message was then sent from the boat to the God device, which ultimately detonated a bomb placed under the driver's seat of Daphne's car. All of this happened within minutes of Daphne entering her car. Following the explosion, phone data revealed that the Maya began heading back towards the Grand Harbour at 3:20 p.m. Her son, Matthew, revealed Galizia was actually driving a rental car at the time of her murder. She had chosen to use a rental car out of fear that her own car might be targeted by someone seeking to harm her, and she was right. Tragically, it was Matthew who found what remained of his mother's body after the explosion. He was at home at the time of the murder when he heard the explosion. He rushed outside barefoot to the nearby field where the wreckage of her car lay scattered. In a Facebook post following her death, he mentioned the brutal scene, describing how he found himself surrounded by his mother's body parts. Despite the immense tragedy, Matthew has resolved to carry on his mother's work, vowing to continue her legacy of fearless journalism. With the gruesome way she was killed, it was clear this wasn't someone's first rodeo. Back in December 2017, 10 individuals were arrested in connection with the bombing that killed Daphne Caruana Galizia. The arrests were widely seen as a response to mounting pressure from the European Union on Joseph Muscat's government to demonstrate an effort to investigate her murder. While 7 of the detained individuals were later released, 3 suspects, brothers Alfred and George DiGiorgio, along with a man named Vincent Muscat, have been formally charged with her murder. On February 23, 2021, Vince Muscat was sentenced to 15 years in prison after admitting his role in the murder of Daphne Caruana Galizia. In his testimony, Muscat implicated Alfred, who is also accused of carrying out the car bombing, alleging that former Minister Chris Cardona provided information on Caruana Galizia's whereabouts before the assassination and gave tip-offs prior to the December 2017 arrests. Cardona has denied these allegations and dismissed them as pure evil fiction. A subsequent inquiry by former judges pointed to a broader issue within the Maltese state, accusing it of fostering an atmosphere of impunity that encouraged Caruana Galizia's killers to believe they would face minimal consequences. In July 2022, George DiGiorgio, speaking from jail, confessed to detonating the car bomb that killed Galizia. He mentioned wanting to plead guilty in an effort to reduce his and his brother Alfred's sentences. During the trial, at Valletta's Central Court in October 2022, both George and Alfred DiGiorgio dramatically changed their pleas to guilty on charges including willful homicide, causing a fatal explosion, illegally possessing explosives, and criminal conspiracy. As a result, they were each sentenced to 40-year prison terms. On November 25th, Malta's President, George Vella, granted a pardon to Melvin Thuma. He was a taxi driver who was accused of acting as a middleman between the 3 men charged with Daphne Caruana Galizia's murder and those who allegedly ordered the killing. Prime Minister Muscat requested the pardon in exchange for Thuma's testimony. This pardon basically means that Thuma cannot be tried for any alleged involvement in Galizia's murder. The decision to grant the pardon came following recommendations from Malta's Attorney General and Police Commissioner and is subject to various conditions that can be reversed. In a separate development, Maltese businessman Jorgen Fenech has been arrested multiple times and questioned in connection with the investigation. Most recently, Fenech was arrested and detained without charge for 48 hours while he was on his yacht, Vanek has since been released on police bail, and his lawyers declined to comment on the matter. A lot of people have been critiquing the investigation surrounding Galizia's death, including her own family. Some even suggest that the investigation could implicate Prime Minister Muscat if he wasn't the one overseeing it. Muscat hasn't directly commented on the investigation, stating that he believes justice will be served. He recently thanked his cabinet members for their service, but stated he could not comment on the ongoing investigation. Maltese opposition leader Adrian Delia has voiced strong criticism against Prime Minister Muscat and his inner circle, holding them responsible for creating an environment that led to Galizia's murder. Delia stated in an interview that the Prime Minister and his ministers were at the very least aware of the situation that led to her assassination, if not actively involved. Delia stressed that Caruana Galizia's murder occurred in the context of her exposing corruption scandals involving government officials. He accused the Prime Minister of initially protecting members of his inner circle who were under investigation by Galizia, and of failing to provide adequate protection to the journalist, which ultimately led to her death. If you found this video interesting, please show your support by liking and subscribing to our channel for more content. Until next time, take care.